I love cooking and I love teaching people how to cook. I've been doing both for 30 years. To cook well, it helps if you love and value food, as that's where it all starts. My approach to cooking is simple and not new. Use the best ingredients you can get organized, and follow the recipe. And that way, you'll be sure to get really wonderful results.
The mention of the word kale is enough to wrinkle many a face in disgust, which is a shame, because kale is fantastic. Boiled until soft and pureed with a grating of nutmeg and a splash of cream, it's one of the best winter vegetables. You can introduce to chili, garlic, Indian spices, Southeast Asian flavors, Spanish smoked paprika and chorizo. You're not even beginning to scratch the surface of the flavors it will marry with. The first recipe today is kale broth with lemon zest and Parmesan. So subtle seasoning is required here, and think of the lemon and Parmesan as added seasonings as you sprinkle them on. So go with a light hand and be careful when tasting. Before we start on the broth, I'm going to make chicken stock, utterly worthwhile, an essential part of any cook's repertoire.
So for a chicken stock, you need chicken bones. They can be raw bones, like I'm using today, or they can be cooked bones, or you can actually put a combination of the raw and cooked into the saucepan and cook them at the same time. I've got my vegetables here. I've got some sliced carrots, a little bit of leek, celery, and onions. The vegetables don't need to be finely chopped here, just coarsely chopped, because the stock is going to simmer for about 2 hours. I like to put plenty of vegetables in with the chicken bones because, of course, they add loads of flavour. A sprig of thyme, some parsley stalks. Now, you don't put in the leaves. They just give a strong, slightly bitter flavour. So it's just the stalks of the parsley like that. And then you keep the parsley leaves for chopping and sprinkling onto your broth or whatever. And then the other herb I like to use is some bay. So this is a strong herb, but with a really lovely sweet flavour. So those go in. A few peppercorns. Now, when I say a few peppercorns, 4 or 5 for this size saucepan. Don't just throw them in willy-nilly, or again, you'll have a peppery broth, which is not really the object of the exercise. Just enough cold water to cover the bones and the vegetables. And then we're going to simmer it just for about 2 hours. I have a saucepan of stock that I made earlier, just here, and just show you what it looks like at this stage. It could not be described as a thing of beauty, but it's the liquid that we're after. So this is ready to strain. Just nice and gently sieve it. And you see we've really got a lovely, beautiful liquid. What you'll notice is, as it sits, is that the fat starts to rise to the surface. But if I lift some of the stock out, it's not quite as clear as water, but it's really clear. It's not terribly cloudy, so that's going to be just lovely and make a really, really lovely broth. If you taste it at this stage, it's quite interesting. Delicious, but slightly underwhelming. But as soon as you add a pinch of salt to this, it's just immediately a revelation. This is full of goodness from the good bones, the good vegetables. You've got the essence of these ingredients into the liquid. This is a wonder food, really. I mean, you could almost live on this, and I can't cook without this. So with our lovely chicken stock, we're going to make a kale broth. And this is a master recipe. So where I'm using kale today as the green vegetable, or the green ingredient in the soup. So to get us starting, I'm going to sweat off a little base of potatoes and onions. So I've got some diced potatoes like that. And then I need some chopped onions and also some crushed garlic. So I get my butter on melting there now, just while I'm preparing my onions. Cut down towards the root, like that, but not all the way through. And then the same at the other side, like that. And then when I get to the middle, I just cut straight down. So I have 2 bits of onion that are going to sit flat on my work surface. Then chop in the other direction, again back towards the root. So the root is holding everything together. And then finally in the opposite direction again, and you get a nice, neat dice. The last little bit like that, you just need to run over it like that. So add in the potatoes and the onions, and they should sizzle like that a little. Give those a little stir, but I also am going to add some garlic. Hold it by the root end and just run it up and down along the microplane. The papery covering on the garlic protects your fingers from the blades, and you get a lovely, beautiful puree of garlic like that. So just push that off. A pinch of salt, pepper, black pepper, which is slightly less piquant than white pepper. Then give the vegetables a stir to coat them in the butter. Really important technique that I refer to as sweating. We're cooking the vegetables with no liquid. Really sets a different level of flavour than if you chucked everything in one go. So the parchment paper, greaseproof paper, butter wrapper as an extra layer of insulation that keeps in the steam. And the steam is what prevents it from burning because of moisture circulating in the pan. And I've got it on a very low heat there. And that's going to sweat for about 10 minutes. So kale, what isn't there that hasn't been said about kale in the last few years? It's regarded as a superfood. It's delicious eaten raw. It can be pureed. It's wonderful in soups or broths like this. Comes on a tough stalk like that. So just pull the softer, greener leaves off the stalk. That's not so great for eating, really. You could maybe chop it very, very finely and add it to a salad, but that would be, be sort of hard going. Pull the bits of kale into quite small pieces, not too big. If you leave the bits too big, it's just a little bit difficult to eat. Now let's look back and see what's happening in here. See the way the steam has come out? If you're not trapping the steam, it's probably going to burn. And we're not trying to sweat these until they're cooked because we want them to hold their shape, so they're only partly cooked at this stage. So they're still holding their shape. You can clearly see the dice of potato and the dice of onion. So I can add in my chicken stock. Imagine the goodness that's going to be in this finished soup. And give it a stir, and at this stage you can turn the heat up actually, because I'm going to bring this up to a simmer, and I'm going to simmer it now until the potatoes and onions are completely tender. Just lift out a couple of bits like that, and then take a knife and just see. You can see it's completely tender, but they're still holding their shape. Now, when I put the greens in, kale in our case, leave the lid off. That's the sort of the rule that doesn't really change whenever you're cooking green vegetables, and that will help to preserve the nice colour. So I can turn the heat up there a little bit again. So this has been simmering away for about 5 minutes or so. Turn off the heat. Then knife goes through it, it's really tender. Now I need to taste, it's really important. So see how we're doing for our seasoning. It needs a little more salt and also a little more pepper. And it's tasting sweet and really lovely, and the flavour of the chicken stock is fantastic. So stir that in, taste again, and see how that's improved the situation, hopefully. Yeah, it's that last little pinch of salt and pepper, not to make it over-seasoned, is really a transformation. Now this is ready to serve. You've got a broth, little bits of potato and onion, and then those lovely little frilly bits of kale. So it'll be lovely just like that, but I like to put a little pinch of Parmesan cheese on top, and that just gives a little richness, not making it too rich. And then, what may seem unusual, just a small little grating of lemon. And lemon and kale and Parmesan is a really, really good combination of flavour. And then, also optional, but I think delicious, a few little drops of good extra virgin olive oil on top. And they float on top in a lovely sort of green slick. And the whole combination of flavour, light, delicious, refreshing, health food in a bowl. A good heavy cast iron grill pan is a very worthwhile investment. The raised edges give richly coloured lines on the ingredient being cooked. A grill pan also produces a slightly deeper flavour than a frying pan, which is why it's my implement of choice for the next recipe: grilled chicken with marjoram and lemon and roasted almond sauce. So for the almond sauce for the grilled chicken, I need to peel the almonds first. I like to buy almonds with the skins on, because when you buy nuts with the skins on, the skin has been the thing that seals in the flavour. So to peel an almond, to get them to this stage, put them into a saucepan of cold water and bring the water up to the boil, and then turn off the heat. And then miraculously, well, maybe not miraculously, but they pop out of their skins really easily. For this recipe, the almond, marjoram and lemon sauce, you could call it a pesto, I suppose, if you want to. I'm going to roast the almonds slightly until they're sort of golden brown in colour. That's going to lift the flavour, give them a more nutty flavour. So I'm going to pop these into a moderately hot oven. 10 minutes or so. Keep an eye on them, it depends on your oven. While the almonds are roasting, I can go ahead with jointing my chicken. To joint the chicken, always start off by removing the legs. So cut through that bit of loose skin just there, between the leg and the breast. The knife should feel the bone pretty much most of the time. When you reach an impasse, because what has happened now is my knife has just hit the bone there, don't keep crunching through, just click it. So in other words, just separating the little ball from the socket. Then it's very easy to just cut between those like that. Now, there's a lovely plump little piece, and that's called the oyster. And if you can manage to get that off as well, it's a good thing. If you miss it, not the end of the world. Cutting into that little oyster-shaped indent to remove the leg. And that's the leg in its entirety. Take the second leg off before you go near the breasts. The breastbone just runs along the middle of the chicken there like that. So I just cut through the skin, not so much cutting through the flesh, and cut all the way through. And then feel for the breastbone, which is just running along there. Put your knife in along one side and cut all the way along. Small little strokes of the knife. Cut away at the flesh until suddenly you'll see there's the ball and the socket. So cut between that. It's like cutting soft butter. So to get off the wing bone that is, turn it over skin side down and you can see where you have to go. So the bone is there. Just cut in behind it like that. Comes away nice and cleanly. I'm going to cut this into 3 pieces. I just cut at an angle, and this is aesthetics. Somehow or other I prefer the shape of a piece of chicken like that than when it's cut in a straight line. So this is the chicken leg, which consists of the drumstick and the thigh, and I want to separate them. Turn it over so the skin is down like that. And then where the 2 bones are hinged, which is just here, if you put your knife on top of that, generally speaking, it slides straight down between the joints. I could grill these with the bone in, but I'm going to take the bones out. And again, you'll notice here, there's a little line of fat on top of the bone. So I'm just going to put my knife straight down onto that line of fat, hitting the bone, just cut around it. Then when I get it to this stage, I can slip my knife underneath it, I cut that out, and then just push like that with the blunt side of your knife until you've removed pretty much all of the bone, and then just cut it off. And that goes back into our stock pot. So that's the thigh of the chicken, with the skin still attached, but the bone removed. The drumstick then cut through the flesh onto the bone, and then literally just cut around the top of the bone there. It's that sort of knuckly bit. And then again, you can put your knife through like that, and just sort of slide that off. Cut it down again to that knuckle, and just cut it off there. And you've got the drumstick then, which is boned out. Let's see how my almonds are doing. I'm looking for a golden brownish colour, not too toasted, because I don't want them to get too dark. They may get bitter. My chicken joints, add in a little olive oil, and then a little bit of lemon juice. And then the herb today is marjoram, part of the oregano family. Fantastic, sweet, lovely herb. Toss the chicken joints in the oil. If you put them onto a grill pan that isn't hot enough, they're much more likely to stick. I like to put them skin side down, because the skin will get lovely and crispy. Putting the last few little bits and pieces on. So let's see what's happening with the ones I put on first. So lift it up and have a look. Gorgeous colour. So we can start turning them over. Great grill marks, great colour, and colour equals flavour. Salt and pepper. Now I could continue cooking these here if I want to, but actually they will cook beautifully in the oven. Transfer these now to my moderately hot oven, the same oven that I roasted the almonds in. It's much easier for me then to be thinking and concentrating on my other things while that's safe in the oven, rather than having to keep an eye on the temperature here as it's going along. The carrots I'm going to cook today, I like to cut them at an angle, like that. Carrots into a nice heavy bottomed saucepan, a little water like that, a pinch of salt, a pinch of sugar, twist of pepper, and then I like to put a little butter in as well. And the butter helps to form a lovely syrupy glaze. So you'll be surprised how little water there is in here. Make sure all of the water hasn't evaporated off before the carrots are cooked. So heat on, lid on. Okay, next thing I need to make my almond sauce. A pinch of salt and sea salt. You can use a lovely Irish Atlantic sea salt for this if you want to. Coarser sea salt grips better with the other ingredients. A clove of peeled garlic, and then some of the wonderful marjoram leaves. And then we're going to mash this to a paste. You get a slightly different texture when you use a pestle and mortar for this type of sauce rather than the food processor. So that's starting it off there. Then add in the almonds, and then gradually start to break those down. I'm going to add in a few little drops of water at this stage, I don't want to add in too much olive oil and make it too olivey, too much lemon juice, so the lemon will kill the flavour of everything else. And the water has a sort of, obviously has a completely neutral, you'd say, flavour. Now, and that's pretty much the consistency I want. Slightly creamy consistency. And then the final ingredient, I'm going to fold in a little Parmesan cheese. So mix that in. If I need to add in a little bit more water into this, it's only going to affect the consistency. Okay, that's lovely. Slightly sort of creamy consistency. And that's that. Okay, now let's see how our carrots are doing. Ooh, perfect. Hear that sound? That sizzling sound. That means all of my water has evaporated off. And I've got really, really shiny looking glazed carrots. They're really full of flavour at this stage. So this is my watercress here. This is full of so much goodness, and anybody who's really interested in watercress, you could make a pilgrimage to Birr, to St. Brendan's Well, where watercress grows in great abundance at that particular well at Birr Castle. So chop it coarsely like that. Then simply add that into the carrots, stir around like that. What I want to do now is try and get these to the table with the chicken and the sauce pretty much as quickly as I can at this stage. Chicken onto a nice hot serving dish. Roast potatoes, boiled new potatoes with this would be delicious. So this lovely juice, that's just pure chicken flavour. I like to serve a few little lemon wedges, like that. Okay, a little more of the marjoram sprinkled on. And then a little of the sauce on each piece of chicken. And then we can serve a little more of the sauce then separately. A few little drops of olive oil just to give a little sparkle, but also just to loosen out the sauce a little, just a little like that. So I'd be very happy to sit down to this lovely, fresh tasting, clean, healthy food and totally delicious. Perfect lunch, supper, great.
Delicately flavoured, gently set cream or mousse is an excellent way to end a meal. A sophisticated hint of sweetness and not an onslaught. The kale broth and the grilled chicken are both relatively light dishes, and it would be a shame to spoil the effect by landing a sticky toffee pudding on your guests at this stage. As with almost all set creams and mousses, this one does require gelatine, but don't let that put you off. Once you know the rules, which are both few and simple, you will find that gelatine is really easy to use.
I'm going to get my plums on poaching to serve with the yogurt and cardamom cream. Poaching them is very straightforward. I have a little sugar in my saucepan, and I'm going to add in my plums and just remove any little stalks that there are on top of them. I'm going to poach them with the sugar, but also with a combination of wine and water. Normally you'd just think a sort of a sugar syrup, but I like what the flavour of the wine brings to the plums. So just some red wine, normal sort of table wine. You'll find that when you put all your ingredients into the saucepan, that the liquid won't cover the plums. As it starts to cook and as the sugar dissolves, the plums sort of will soften slightly and they fall in the saucepan, and then there will be plenty of liquid in proportion to plums by the time you're finished. So I'm going to put these on. So start them off on a fairly gentle heat, and then I'll give them a little turn of the wooden spoon every now and then just to make sure the sugar is dissolving. Star anise is a wonderful spice. It's, to start off with, it looks pretty exotic. It's this lovely sort of star-shaped, and it's used in both sweet and savoury cooking. And when used with discretion, it's delicious. But if you use too much, it goes from being highly perfumed to being too perfumed. To release the flavour from the star anise, I just bash them up coarsely, because we will be straining these out of the yogurt and cream mixture before we put this to set. So they're just like that, and that is sufficiently small for them to release their flavour. So I'm going to put those into my saucepan, bring it a little closer, in there. Add a little bit of sugar, some cream, and some milk. Our cream and our milk are cold at this stage. That's going to draw the flavour as it just warms up slightly, and also, very important that we dissolve the sugar at this stage. So lowish heat, and again, I would give this a stir every now and then, and within about 3 minutes, the sugar will be dissolved. The cream and the milk will have infused. While I'm waiting for my sugar to dissolve, we're going to get our gelatine on sponging. 3 tablespoons of water in a jug, to which I'm going to add 3 rounded teaspoons of gelatin, carefully measured. A certain amount of gelatin to set a certain amount of liquid, essentially. So we have just a lovely wobbly texture. Then stir the gelatin in, nice and gently, until it no longer looks dry. So in a few minutes, that will look like a sponge. Now let's see how our sugar and cardamom and milk and cream, that's fine. The sugar, you can't feel it in the bottom of the saucepan, so it's dissolved. And there's a little bit of heat in there, so that's just going to sit there infusing. I sometimes cut down the sugar a little bit if I find it's affecting the overall deliciousness of the dish. Taking sugar a little out of the recipe won't affect how it sets. It'll still set beautifully because it's the gelatin that's setting it. All the sugar is doing is sweetening it, and you definitely don't want it to be oversweet. Now the gelatin is looking sort of sponge-like. In fact, if I left that there a little bit longer, it would be completely firm, but that's sufficient now to be safely put into a little saucepan of sort of barely simmering water to dissolve out. So that's going to take 5 minutes or so to dissolve down to a clear liquid. The syrup seems to rise in the saucepan and the plums just seem to fall, but gradually they find their level and you find that actually you've got plenty of the liquid for the amount of plums you're poaching. Okay, they're doing really nicely there. Nice gentle simmer. Now, oh good, the gelatin is ready. So what we're looking at to see is that all of the tiny little grains of gelatin, they're like little grains of sugar, have completely dissolved out into a liquid. So at this stage, I usually do give it a little stir. It's completely clear. So this is now ready to use. Now what you never do with gelatin, powdered gelatin particularly, you never pour the dissolved gelatin into the mixture. Okay, you just don't do that, because sometimes when you do that, that's a shock, and the gelatin sets straight away into little sort of tiny little balls of jelly. So I'm going to add some of our cooled infused milk, cream, sugar and star anise into the gelatin. Like that. Give it a stir. And then we can pour this into the bulk of the milk and cream mixture, stirring all of the time. At this stage, the milk and cream is infused with the star anise, and I can now strain out the bits of star anise, because I don't need those. They've done their job, and you certainly don't want to be crunching on one of those when you're eating these. That would be highly unpleasant. And now I'm going to add in my yogurt. So I like to use unsweetened, full-fat yogurt for this. And then I find a whisk is the best thing just to mix it through until the yogurt dissolves completely into the mixture. I have a large serving dish, but you could also put it into little individual dishes. Nice glasses, coffee cups, whatever it is. So this is, I think, a perfect sized portion, and if you can manage to get it into your little glass or your coffee cup or whatever without dribbling, all the better. You could actually have decanted this into a jug for the pouring part. Now I wasn't quite so good with my dribbling there. In any event, if you do dribble a little bit, now is the time to clean before it actually sets onto your little cup. And then this bowl here, just pour it in. So it's hard to imagine in a way that this liquid will set into a lovely, softly set cream. Okay, I'm going to pop those in the fridge to set. They're ready in about 4 hours. Could be overnight. We're going to have the plums with them today. And once you've mastered this simple technique, as you can see, for dissolving and using gelatin, there's so many other different things you can do. It's a wonderful technique to master.